to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love, a love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways, guide all our hopes and all our dreams, past every glow that only seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free.
Join us on O Master.
Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways.
I'm going to read from Swamiji's Rays of the One Light. And just a reminder, it's a book in the tradition of Yoganandaji of blending the Bible with the Bhagavad Gita. The Yoganandaji, Swami Sri Yukteswar, the point was to show the underlying truth. So even if you weren't raised with the Bible, we can learn about that underlying truth through Yoganandaji's interpretations and see the parallels also with the Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes these readings will talk a lot about the Gita and a little about Christ, or a lot about Christ and a little about the Gita. It just depends which week we're on. This one is kind of balanced. The title for today is called In Surrender Lies Victory. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. A case might be made for surrender as a path to victory in worldly conflicts, the way of passive resistance, for example, in preference to armed resistance. But our point here concludes a higher kind of surrender, the surrender of our deluded, egoic will to the wise and almighty will of God. Human will is, as Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, guided by whims and limited understanding. The divine will is in harmony with every level of reality, though the divine will sometimes appears to us at first to be wrong. It proves always, eventually, to be for our highest good. Human will is inconsistent. It leads us one day to success, another to disaster. The divine will, when we surrender to it completely, though it is not always easy to do so, always brings us deep inner peace and joy in the end. Jesus Christ demonstrated this perfect surrender to God's will in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's in Israel, right? Or Palestine. In the Garden of Gethsemane. The night before he was captured and imprisoned, preparatory to his crucifixion, he went apart from the others to pray and asked them to pray also. But when he returned to them, he found them asleep. Out of his love for them, he excused them, saying, "The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." He then urged them again, saying, "Watch and pray." Their weakness in those circumstances was particularly sad, and the disciples themselves must have regretted it bitterly later on. We all know the symptoms of human weakness, though we may excuse them in ourselves, saying, "Well, after all, I'm only human." But what are the signs of true strength? We find in all cases that these are the fruit of a life wholly surrendered to God. The Bhagavad Gita lists these signs in the 13th chapter: humbleness, truthfulness, and harmlessness, patience and honor, reverence for the wise, purity, constancy, control of self, contempt for self-delights, self-sacrifice, perception of the certainty of ill in birth, old age, and frail mortality, disease, the ego's suffering, and sin, detachment, lightly holding thoughts of home, children, and wife, those ties which bind most men, an ever-tranquil heart, heedless of good or adverse fortune, with the will upraised to worship me alone, unceasingly, loving deep solitude and shunning noise of foolish crowds, calm focus on the self perceived within and in infinity. These qualities reveal true wisdom, Prince. All that is otherwise is ignorance. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
I'd like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity, which is a book of prayer poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. Teach me to bring all goodness into the net of my consciousness. Long ago I had a little torch. It was a plaything of my mind. I toyed with it. A tiptoe I would work it, peering into dark, secret corners of my thoughts. In its gleam I would capture glimpses in dark mental waters of many little golden minnows of creative ideas. You know what minnows are, little tiny fish? Kuti fish. I caught some of them and used them for bait to catch bigger denizens of my consciousness. But my hook was small, and many large fish of inspiration got away. Now I carry a searchlight, and no hook and line, but a net purchased with the precious gold-spun dreams of increasing understanding. With my large net of woven light, I will sweep the very ocean floor for thy wisdom. Ah, my expanding net will encompass all thy ocean. I will haul to myself all the goodness, golden deeds, and drops of inspiration, yes, too, thy very self, and make all that my own. Devotees of India were traveling around America with Swamiji, and not with him, but sort of following him along to every place he went in America. This was in his last year in America in 2012. And they were just saying, my gosh, every community is beautiful, every group of devotees is radiant with joy, and it's true. On the deepest level it's true, on a superficial level it's true. But as we know, each one of us has moods, and we go through different challenges. Sometimes a community as a whole goes through a big test where it's time to batten down the hatches and be strong, or other times just to meditate calmly and move through, or whatever. But the Maya still has its fight too going on. And so, but not to these devotees from India who were seeing every community just blazingly brilliant with light and beauty. And it was. Again, I don't mean to say that it wasn't. However, we were also, they came to our community in Los Angeles and said, "My God, so beautiful, fantastic." And again, that's what we were hoping for, but behind the scenes, we were all working really hard trying to keep everything going. And we realized that in addition to the first truth, which was they were seeing other devotees of Master. They were seeing people who had been on the path a long time, who had dedicated themselves to these teachings, and they were also seeing their own counterparts, their own brothers and sisters who they were just meeting. So there was a resonance and a joy there too. Still, every community they saw, they were there because Swamiji was there. So of course, if Swamiji is in the community, everything is going to look beautiful. And as we were kind of joking, everyone is on their best behavior. And it's not because I better be on my best behavior so Swamiji's here. It's just that you see Swamiji and it just puts you in your best behavior. Now you can still feel that when you look at Swamiji now. You can still feel that when you feel him in your heart. You can still feel that when you go onto YouTube and then recommended for you, Swami Kriyananda. Who do you think made the recommendation? Swami Kriyananda, Paramhansa Yogananda. They get in there and they change the code and then they make all this show up for you. And so anyway, that was the thing, that when Swamiji was physically with people, there was such a beautiful light coming from him and also reflected from people too. And that's true. I don't mean to say that people were elevated beyond their actual depths. No, they were elevated to their actual height. You see, that's a difference. It's not to say that, well, around Swamiji, anybody looks good. No. It's with Swamiji, everybody was operating from their soul center. It's just as we ourselves experience when we meditate, when we are centered, we operate in a way that's just natural to us. There's no strain, there's no effort, and yet people will say, "Wow, you're really calm in the middle of this situation," or "Wow, there was such peace coming from you," and so on. And yet we say, "But this is who I am." In fact, I can't even say this is who I am. This is just what is. And I don't mean that in sort of a Vedantic sense, that I will not say I, because you're not supposed to say I, and I never say I. Oops. I don't mean it like that. I mean it that it's not even that we say I am peace, just that peace is flowing through this channel, through this body, and I'm so busy in a way feeling the peace that I'm not even noticing that I'm feeling it. I'm just enjoying it. I mean, when you're watching a movie, a good movie, do you always think, "Wow, I am watching this movie. I wonder what I look like as I'm watching this movie. Do I look interested? Do I look intelligent?" We don't notice. We don't care what we look like. We're just watching the movie. So it's the same way when we feel that joy. We're not self-conscious, in other words. That's the wonderful thing you see about the wonderful education for a yogi in watching young children grow up, especially as a school teacher, which I was for about 7 years. It's helpful because you see them and, you sort them by age. And so that, all of these are in first standard and all of these are in second standard and third standard. So, as opposed to just a horde of kids, which you can just generally maybe run the other way, I don't know. But when you see them all in, okay, what's the difference between age 6 and age 6.5 and age 7 and so on, because you really get to know them as batches. And so you see that at about age 10 or so, roughly, give or take, suddenly all the little smiles of the kids, suddenly, they start to recede a little bit. In India, it probably takes longer. Children in general, I would say, take longer to mature than they do in America. And yet, Swamiji said, when he gave the stages of maturity, that a child really becomes an adult at the age of 24, which is about how it is in India. It's from my observations. Whereas in America, the emphasis is on 18. And so 6 years sooner. And there is a lot of kind of, false sense of maturity and growing up and being independent and so on, I think. I think they would do better to just take time and have childhood take a little longer. Okay, so in terms of the light within and being, that is who we actually are. As I was saying, it isn't to say I feel peace, but rather that peace just is flowing through me. And so when we feel that, when we operate from that level, we just know this is who I am. And this is more who I am than how I seem to be on a normal day-to-day when I'm caught up in moods and stresses and fears and so on. And you can only understand that if you've meditated. Or if you've had a meditative experience where suppose you went on some big hike or you went on some big journey and then suddenly you felt caught up in peace or rapture or something like that. It doesn't require meditation. But meditation is what brings it back over and over and over again. And with increasing frequency and increasing depth. That's one of the reasons for meditation, because otherwise these moods of inspiration just come upon us and then they don't. There's not a sort of way of just, oh great, as one man who met Yogananda, he was an American businessman, and he met Yogananda and he said, I want Kriya initiation. And it's a wonderful story of that, but I'll skip it for now. And he said that after receiving Kriya, he went back to his hotel room, and his hell room. I'm thinking ahead to the story. I'll tell you, he went back to his hotel room, and he practiced Kriya, and he said he felt this surge of energy and bliss go up his spine, and he fell over on the bed, and he was so full of joy and, again, rapture. And he said to himself, my gosh, I used to suffer from moods and feel depressed sometimes and even go through hell a little bit. And then all I have to do is take a few of these and this is great. This is better than any cocktail, as he put it. I'll just do a few of these and knock that mood right out. And so he said it didn't end up always being that way for him. But again, that experience of joy that comes over us is who we really are. And the great thing about, as I said, when Swamiji was in people's physical presence, how they would respond to him that way, it wasn't just because his light was radiating on them in a sort of impersonal or unintentional or passive way, just that the sun was shining on whatever it shined on. It was also that he consciously saw us at our own highest potential. When you looked at him, you knew that he was looking at you and seeing you as a saint already. And that's one reason why people were so open with him. People were so trusting of him. People he didn't even know. He saw that way. He didn't just say, well, I know you've been on the path 40 years, so I think I'll look at you as a saint. It wasn't that way. He saw that in everybody. And it wasn't also an affirmation that, come on, you're a saint, right? Come on now. It wasn't that. It was that's the way he saw. Just as this beautiful affirmation, I know that as I view others, so I myself become. And it wasn't that he was trying to affirm his own saintliness by looking at others as saints. He was already feeling that saintliness. And again, he wasn't feeling saintliness like, well, I'd say I'm a saint by now. No, he was just feeling God. Remember, in everything that we talk about, God is the point. Sometimes we may talk about relationships. Sometimes we may talk about sadhana. Sometimes we may talk about health and healing. Sometimes we may talk about meditation. But God is the point. In fact, Nayaswami Bharat said yesterday, when he was a monk, he was very focused on his sadhana, and he said, as all the monks were, and he said to Swamiji, do you have any advice for my meditation? And Swamiji said, keep Divine Mother first. And he didn't go on to expand on his own interpretation of that, but one obvious thing is, what are we meditating for? It is not to become the 5-star meditator. or the 7-star. Just look what a meditator I am. It's not that, though the ego will try. You see? I have the higher kriyas. Yeah, well, I have the highest kriyas. You see, it's ridiculous. It's, where is God in your heart? And of course, it isn't that, any of us are insincere, but these little ripples come through and they distract us. And so Swamiji had Divine Mother first in his heart. And so that naturally radiated out. But notice even in the affirmation, I know that as I view others, so I myself become. He didn't say, for I know that as I view the world, so I myself become. Because it's easy to love a flower. And it's easy to love a beautiful little animal of some kind. And it's easy to love the sky. It's not always so easy to love your neighbor, who puts you through the, nth degree of questions and all these things. Why do you insist on behaving this way that annoys me every time? And you say, well, it's funny you should ask. Because I could ask you the same thing. Why do you insist on Anyway, never mind. So it's just like, for I know that as I view others, so I myself become. So that gives us a deep teaching. If we want to be more calm, peaceful, we should view others either with eyes of calmness and peace. In other words, don't let them bother us, but also see, why is this person agitated? Why are they coming up to me, my neighbor, and saying, you did this, 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 and this, and it bothers me? Because it disturbed their peace. And they want that peace back. And we could argue that peace is inside, and after all, a true yogi would meditate no matter how many children are screaming outside, whatever, but it's not our role always to instruct others. In fact, it's never. But what can we gain from that? It opens the heart again. The poor person, maybe they had a headache, they had just gone to sleep, and they got woken up by this. I can understand. And we may not say any of this even, because for some people it isn't helpful. For some people it is. But in any case, I know that as I view others, the opposite is also something Master said. That he said, if you judge others too harshly, you are dooming yourself to go through the same circumstances that they are going through. Or if you disapprove, he said, something along the lines of, you will basically live the life or go through the karma of those of whom you disapprove so uncharitably, is the word he used. Uncharitable. Be charitable towards others, which means give them the benefit of the doubt. Assume that from their point of view, what they're doing makes sense. Again, when you're with a child, and I say this with an asterisk because we don't view others as children. After all, my child neighbor, I understand why you are so grumpy. You don't want that either. And people will feel it if you think it. I am on the spiritual path, and so I can see from my broad charitability. You don't want if you think that way. When we're saints, then maybe we can think as adults, but otherwise we're all just children. And the reason I say that is because the saints themselves usually can be the most childlike of all, because they say God is the only parent, really. So anyway, that when we see a child is upset or in a mood or frustrated or whatever, we try to speak to them from their point of view. We don't say, your toy is broken, well, all is Maya. Stop crying. Why do you weep? Think of what Krishna says in the Gita, the saint does not cry over broken toys. You understand that this is a sorrow, and yet the next toy will come. Or you maybe even be able to talk to the child, well, the toy is broken, but you're not broken or something, but mostly just hold them. Because it's like, my joy is lost, my joy is back. So as I was saying, so Swamiji saw us, all of us, and sees you the same way, according to your own highest potential, which is to say, your own highest reality. That all we're trying to do is manifest that reality more and more and more. So again, we don't identify ourselves with, I am here trying to get there. It's more that I am here, up here already, but sometimes I dip down, or sometimes I'm not quite as much here as I should be. I'm not quite myself. And so that's another good thing to realize, that one person was saying she realized at a certain point in an argument with someone else, in any argument that she had, that if her tone of voice started to go a certain way, then she was wrong. She said, even if I was right, I was wrong. Because it would be like, okay, fine, I'm just saying it's better to be patient. Just like even if it's the right words, it's the wrong consciousness. And why? What was wrong? It's because it meant, perhaps to her, she realized her emotions were disturbed too much. Because we could say the emotions were disturbed slightly. Look, we're all basically dealing with emotions that are disturbed, but we're working on making them less disturbed. But this meant that emotions had gone to boil, or that she was too attached to being right. Sister Gyanamata, Swamiji's most advanced woman disciple, said you can say anything to the Guru, and I think by extension you can say anything to anyone, if you say it with detachment and respect. And see how beautiful those two thoughts are, because if you say it with respect, that's usually what makes people, the lack of respect is usually what offends people so much. And our unawareness of how we're implying disrespect to someone in saying, in our assumption, like, you forgot to turn the switch off. It's, no, I didn't forget to turn the switch off. I did turn it off, and someone else came and turned it. Just like, okay. I wonder, did you turn the switch off? Or I'm not sure, did the switch get turned off in some way that, doesn't offend? Because who cares? Why get offensive? Now, this is one way of being. The other way is we can say, pardon me, but if you would be so kind to offer a moment of your kind attention, I'm wondering kindly if you kindly turn the switch kindly off. We can get ridiculous with that. And so it's like, look, just say, switch off, Ninga, paninga. You just can get to the point. It's fine. But, it's what's in your heart. You say it with detachment and respect. Now, Sairam is in the back cracking up, and I had asked him to sit in the back for my safety, because then at least I don't have to look at him laugh, because it will just make me laugh so much if I see it. So with respect and detachment, what is detachment in this case? I am saying something to you, but I am not requiring you to accept it. You can reject it, you can disagree, you can agree, you can have a different point of view. I respect and am also not attached to your receiving of what I'm saying. Again, assuming it's kindly. It's not to say, I think you're an idiot. And I don't mind if you agree or disagree. It's not like that. But we have to be open to all these different points of view. We have to realize that, gosh, we appreciate it when people speak to us that way, when they don't require us that we must agree. As one university professor said, he said, I used to think that when I was in a debate with someone, they had two choices. They could either agree with me or die. And he said, but now I've seen that there are other options that can come from a good conversation. And so again, that attachment is something that we want to let go of, and we want to check inside of ourselves. Do I feel attached to this having to be the case? Then let me get back to myself. Let me release this thing that is coloring and clouding the situation, get back to center, get back to my own highest level that I can reach. Then let me approach it. Again, as my friend said, I realized at a certain point in my tone of voice, which Swamiji said in one of these Living Wisely, Living Well readings each day, notice how quickly the tone of voice reflects a change in consciousness, and particularly a change in our emotions. You can use it for self-diagnosis, because anger and really upset emotions give such a surge of confidence. No. I will tell you one thing. I am right. But if you listen to the voice, your own tone of voice, and if you can't, look at the expression of the face that you're talking to, or then you say, okay, wait. Something is off. Something is inharmonious here. Let me see what is my part of it. And our part may be saying the right thing at the wrong time. I felt perfectly calm and detached. I just felt like saying it. By the way, I think you should do this, and this. But if it's the wrong time, then the fault is still on us. Are we observing the other person's reality? Are we gauging their receptivity and interest? Another friend of mine said, she was arguing with someone, and she said, finally, do you agree that what I'm saying is a good suggestion? And he said, yes. And do you agree that you would benefit from it if you were to do it? He said, yes. She said, then why don't you do it? And he said, it's not a priority for me right now. And she said, And then she could accept it. She could realize that of the many things that we have to work on in ourselves, that this right now for him was not his priority. It wasn't saying she was wrong, but he was saying the timing isn't now. Now, not everybody, under an onslaught of our friendly suggestions, will be calm enough to say, that's not a priority for me right now. But that might be what they would be wanting to say. And again, if this doesn't make sense, just reverse the roles and think of all the friendly suggestions that come our way. I'm just saying, just one little thing. If you could just do this one little thing. But it may not be a priority for us. It may not even be what's right for us. Growth is directional. And so to move, we may receive suggestions that will put us in the wrong direction for ourselves, as we know. But on the other hand, they may be pushing us in the right direction, if only to be calmer in the face of all kinds of feedback. You see, it may not be that, because it's God speaking to us through everyone. And anything that happens to us is our own karma. In this sense, I don't mean this in a heavy way, I mean this in a wonderful way, that it's God doing it to us through someone else. So even if it's unreasonable, unkind, and unfair, the test may not be for us to find ways to fight back. The test may be for us to see how much we can calmly take. Or the test may be for us to find a different group of friends. The test may be to walk out. And only you can get a sense. I mean, walk out temporarily, because you may have to walk back in. But in other words, you have to start to feel what is the right behavior for me now. What is that I'm being pushed in? And if you're not sure, then you can experiment a little bit and say, well, I think I'll say a thing or two now to you. You said this. Do you remember last year when? And then you see how that doesn't work. And you go, okay, I experimented and didn't work, so let me try something else. But the thing to keep in mind is God is sometimes testing us that way. Saying, it's not for you to accept this harassment. I'm trying to get you to let go, either inwardly or outwardly. As I said, find a different group of friends, or to realize, listen, we are free and alone in this world, alone in our responsibility. Yes, God may give us responsibilities, and then they're given to us by Him to discharge faithfully. But it's still Him giving them to us because of how we will grow, what we will become through those things. So it isn't at all that, when we think of, the demands the family puts upon us, or the demands that society puts upon us. Swamiji was once asked, what about when we want to do something that society does not approve of? What about our responsibility to society? And so he answered the question sort of broadly, and I wish I remembered more specifically what he said. But the person asking was not quite satisfied, because he was speaking more in terms of family than the society. And I think the reason why he spoke more in terms of family is because he knew for this person that was actually more the problem for her. Often it would happen that you would ask Swamiji a question, he would answer the exact opposite. And you would say, sorry, did you not? And he understood. But he understood the problem or the question behind the question. This is what you should have asked. I'll answer that. And so similarly, in this situation, the woman said, but what about our obligation to society? And Swamiji said, listen, if you paid your taxes, I'd say you pretty well discharged your obligation to society. You know, isn't that beautiful statement in the Gita? The sage is beyond the noise of foolish crowds. Now, I don't mean that all crowds are foolish, but there are crowds that are foolish. Beautiful line. It's parallel in Swamiji's song, Go On Alone. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? That's all anyone is ever saying to you. When they criticize you, when they're saying, why can't you just be this way? They're saying, because your dream is not my own. That's all. I want a reaffirmation of my own values by having us all agree that these are the best values. And if I see someone having even the things that I cherish the most and discarding them for something else, something greater, in this case, if you're on the spiritual path and renouncing these things so to have more of God, well, that shakes my faith. And so I don't want that. As Yoganandaji said, Jesus Christ came, all the avatars come, but in this case he was speaking of Jesus Christ, to also be a divine mirror to everyone, to say, you see, this is what you too can become. This is what you are in yourself already. But at the same time, when you see someone who is so clear, the mirror also shows us that we aren't quite that. And so Master said, well, you have two choices then. Become like that image that you see in the mirror, or break the mirror. And that's, of course, what so often happens. Even in our own minds, we hear of a high standard. Practice your meditation day and evening and so on. And try to do all these things. And sometimes the ego comes in and goes, well, yeah, I don't feel like it. In a way, that's us pulling away from our own nature. And that's not to say that we should feel guilty and upset and, oh my God, and I'm pulling away from my own nature and all these things. But just to say, okay, who's saying I don't feel like it? Is the soul saying, I don't feel like meditating. I don't feel like bliss today. No, it is not the soul that's saying that. It's the ego saying, you have to understand I'm tired. Or you have to understand that I'm busy. I've got work. I've got worries. So it's okay as long as we acknowledge who is the one doing the speaking. And then find a way. Sometimes we can catch that thought and that's enough to turn it. And say, no, I will meditate. I'll meditate for 30 seconds. When we're fighting the temptation not to. And then that 30 seconds blossoms into a minute and 30 seconds. And all these things can happen. On the other hand, we may get in periods where, of course, our sadhana is fine. We're meditating an hour and a half a day and it's all going fine. We have to remember, though, that, as Master said, every meditation must be deeper than the previous days. Now that's a pretty tall order, I have to admit. Someone did say to me recently, every meditation for me is deeper than the previous days. And he didn't know, I don't think, that Master said this, and I thought, good for you, man. But we go through tests, we go through dry periods where that joy in meditation is withdrawn or withheld even. Because God is saying, will you keep on going even though you're not getting instantly rewarded every time? I mean, suppose every time you buy a lottery ticket and you win. So this is a very bad analogy, but too bad, I'm already halfway through it. Yeah, I mean, you would always just keep buying lottery tickets I won again, excellent. So then what happens when you go and you try and then you don't win? Oh, this one didn't work, you try again. Okay, this meditation didn't work. Okay, I guess it's over. No, it's like keep on going. Don't buy lottery tickets. But in terms of going deeper and deeper in your meditation, we also sometimes get karmic bombs or karma that comes up that kind of clouds, or not kind of, that clouds our experience of joy. And so just know, as Swamiji said, the monks that he was with Master, he said, when they went through tests, through dry periods, meaning they were all kind of in a laboratory together with each other, he said, they could easily have made it through, meaning we can easily make it through with the discipline, which is to say the regular practice of meditation and devotion. In other words, you build up your meditation practice also so that then when it's hard, it kind of keeps going. And then also that you remember, though, that you're meditating on God. And even if this life circumstance is hard, God is still there. And God, even if I'm making a mess of this situation, I still love you. And God, even if I'm not meeting all the standards I want to, no standard is ever going to allow me to reach you. Just be with me now. I can't become like you unless you come into me. That's the only way. And of course, He's already there. But remember also that there's another kind of challenge. When things are going nice. It's going nice. It's good. How you doing? Fine. I like it. I'm happy at this level. I don't want anything. And I'm just content. And contentment is wonderful, but then it can start to become, another word, complacent, which means I'm satisfied with what I have, and I'm not pushing for more. And this is a subtle point, and so if I'm not making it clearly, then just forget it for now, but remember it later. That we have to also actively want God. It's not enough to just be filled with peace, unless in that filled with peace it makes you feel one with God. In other words, we don't want to rest in our deep desire to have more of God's presence, to have more, to do more, to be more. Not with tension. That's one key. If there's tension in it, then forget it. Better to have relaxation. But not to also be passive, because that can be masking for some of us when you get to this point. And I don't mean when you get to this point. I mean, some of us go to this kind of mood right away. Some of us never come into this kind of mood. Some of us will come into it later. But realizing, God, I want you. I'm not happy with what I have. As Master said in Whispers from Eternity, and another one, I will be thy naughty baby. And I am thy naughty baby, and you've been dropping little toys into my crib to distract me. But now I will not stop crying until thou comest, until you yourself come. I will wake all creation with my cries, unless you come. I don't want any more toys. And so that burning desire, sometimes we can not feel that way, because it's hidden beneath that is the thought, well, but I know you won't come. Or, I don't feel worthy of you coming. I know because I'm not good enough you won't come. So why should I ask? In other words, if that natural desire, when you have a friend or you have a joy that you enjoy, you want more of it automatically. And so when that isn't coming, then ask, is there some hidden thought behind that is kind of blocking that? Because that thought should be coming. That's a good thing in general to keep in mind when you're not feeling at your highest, to say, what's pulling me down? And the answer is not, him. He's pulling me down. No. Look inside. But I'm saying this to all of us, of course. You notice how when you see a child a year later, it's like, oh my God, you're so big. I remember when you were, and every child hates that. Yes, I remember too. And so, anyway, it's the same way this way. You see people a year later and you see how much more joy there is. But remember that it isn't only that they are changing, but also that we are changing. The eyes with which we observe are changing. There was a woman who met Master and went into such an ecstasy, and she was a trained violinist, a musician, and she went to an orchestra performance where the instruments were not tuned to each other, and somehow they weren't picking it up, and they were playing awfully. And she said, see how beautifully they sound. And her friends were looking at her like she was crazy because she was the first one to be able to catch any musical defect and criticize it. And she was just saying, they're so lovely. Because the eyes with which she was perceiving, the ears with which, the heart with which she was receiving this was so full of joy that everything seemed joyful. And in fact was joyful. Because you can imagine God chuckling about, yeah, they didn't get it tuned right. Isn't this funny? You know, she could feel the joy behind it. So similarly, Mark Twain said something, I think it was Mark Twain, that he was impressed with all the things, once he left home to go to college, he was impressed with all the things his parents learned while he was away. And when he came back 4 years later, he was so impressed to see how much they had gained in wisdom. And it's a joke because what he's saying is, I came to appreciate the wisdom that they always had. But the way he put it was, I was amazed at how much my parents learned while I was away at college. And so again, we realize that it's the observer also that's changing. So the easiest way to see, to be surrounded by saints is to become a saint yourself. And then you will see that saint in everyone. And so just one little parenthetical PS at the very end is that we are moving towards a new center. We're looking for a new center. We've looked at, probably about 20 places or something total now. And we found one potential house in T-Nagar, which I think most of you have heard about and so on. It has one situation that we have to see whether it really is a potential or not. And so the thing to keep in mind, though, I was realizing in all of this is that, yes, Jyotish and Deviji have said, it started with Dhyana and Jayaji, you ought to expand, you ought to look into a new center. Jyotish and Devi also want to come and they want to help the center grow. And we have started to see how the walls are starting to bump up against us. And in level 2 last Sunday, there was a little bit of banging of, walls and people. And we haven't even gotten to Shavasana yet in terms of just making sure there's room for everybody. But still, I was realizing, we have to, for this to work, we have to also want a new center. Not just we, but each of us. And I don't mean, do you not want to do? Hey, want it, okay? I don't mean like, lockstep together, everybody wants it, right? No, I mean that it will be strengthened. The magnetism and the success of the new center will be strengthened to the degree that each one of us wants it. And I don't mean wants with attachment, and I don't mean wants with whatever, for an outward reason, but rather a feeling of, well, Divine Mother, I mean, how many times do you get a chance to found a new center for Master's work? Once? Maybe? And so what an opportunity it is for us individually to grow. Yes, it would have been so nice to be a part of Ananda Village in 1968 when it was started. It would have been. But don't you realize it's 1968 right now? And that people who come later may say, gosh, I wish I were there at the beginning. And I don't mean to say, yes, well, I was. I don't mean it in that way, but to say, in other words, it's so easy for us to overlook the preciousness of what we have right now. But even in just a few weeks' time, even we may see, oh gosh, that was so wonderful. So let it be wonderful now. But having said that, look inside your heart and ask, do I want a larger center? If no, then ask why. And I don't mean and then figure it out and then decide you do. I mean seriously, ask why. Oh, I'm concerned about this or that or whatever. Okay, hold that up, talk to us about it if you want to, or else meditate on it or whatever. But also look for that part of your heart that says, yes, I do. I would like to be able to reach more people. I would like to see the family grow in breadth and depth. I would like to, have a bigger space, all the things. But mostly it's just the joy of doing something together. Master said, Swamiji said, don't you think Babaji and the Masters were, when they were planning this whole work out, were thinking about spiritual communities as a solution? We're going to need a bunch of yogis. He was basically saying we're going to send them down. They're going to need to live with each other because they're going to have to hold this energy, because it's not so easy to establish it when you're all scattered in different parts of the world, different parts of the city even. It needs a focus, and that energy is multiplied when people are together. But, and again, just very logically laying it out, they're going to need a place to gather. And so the masters are all for it. Are we all for it? Now I know that most of you are, if not all of you are, and all of you are mostly for it. And so I'm not saying this out of any concern or any kind of, we got an email the other day. It's not like that at all. But I also realize that there's been a lot of grace behind this, and that's been wonderful. But we also want to add to it, and we want to add to it saying, I would like to do this for you, Master. As I told you before, we told you, this center was founded because once Swamiji said, I want it, and once Ananda Worldwide said, okay, this is how we can get it started, there were different individuals who donated. And in donating, they said, it's because I want to see this happen. I want to help this to happen. And so I'm not speaking of donations right now or anything, but I am saying in terms of that personal call, I want to see this happen. I want to help this happen. And for the joy that I will get out of it, that's all. Not so that my name can be up on the wall. See, that's my name there. I put it there. No, it's not for that. And not to say I am one of the founding members. You can't be because you came one day too late. It's nothing about status, and it's nothing about, look what we have done for Master, although it is on one level. Look what we have done for ourselves. Look at what we have done for God. That's the most beautiful thought, doing it for God. I'm laughing because I'm remembering a man who was new to Ananda, was in a situation where he did a lot of work and he wasn't compensated for it. And in fact, another person sold basically something that included his work and made a lot of money off of it. So not only was he not compensated, but the person profited from his work. And so the man came to Swami Kriyananda and said, I just, I mean, and it was there, but And so Swamiji said, you did it for God. And the man said, I did? I did it for God. Yeah, okay, I guess I did. I guess I did it for God. It was a brand new thought for him, just to think that God, what I'm doing for God. And so again, think of that in everything that you do, and in everyone that you're serving, everyone that you're with, and you will see God responding. God bless you.